Hello and welcome to Lights On. My name is Conrad. I'm your host, and the whole purpose of Lights On is to cover the Bible in a video format so that you can know what a book said in a condensed time frame and possibly have an opinion behind it after the end, after the summary is given. I will give a small opinion, and the whole purpose is to give a video format to my children. So I have 3 children, ages 7, 4, and 2, and I have a 4th one on the way. And in my youth, not necessarily my youth, but early adulthood from 18 to 28, I would say that I was pretty lost. I went to college, I got into alcohol, I got into a bunch of different things that I really had no business being a part of. And at 26, I had a breakdown, had to reinvent myself, and it was bad enough for me to pick up the Bible and read it. And so I picked up the Bible that was given to me. This is the NIV version, and so it's written in plain English. And so I started reading it, and my life physically changed, mentally changed, emotionally changed. And it was all slow, but it's all slow come up. And now I'm to the point where I opened up my own business. I have Mommy's Spicy Ceviche, which is a business where I take ceviche to farmers markets around the state of Washington. My wife and I and a couple of family members go to 6 to 8 farmers markets a week. And so over the last 6 years, I've probably attended about 1,000 farmers markets, and I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of people. And I believe that covering the Bible is the most important thing that we could possibly do, especially for our youth. So since I'm going to cover the Bible, I'm going to go from the front cover to the back cover, and I am going to go in order. So the first story is, the first book in the Bible is Genesis. I'm going to talk about page 1, and then the 4 themes that I find throughout the entire book of Genesis, which is actually 50. There's 50 subtitles within the entire book, and there's 7 stories that are very important, and they all have either 3 of the 4 themes or the 4th theme. And the themes are this. The first theme is faith. You have to have faith in a God that you cannot see, which is very difficult to do, but faith is probably the most important thing in all of Christianity, is believing in a formless God that loves everybody, and the overwhelming majority of us will never get to see God. The second theme in Genesis is the fear of God. So how much are you willing to take his orders and actually listen to God? When you fear God, it's accountability or the fear of God. When you fear God, you will do exactly as he says. And so sometimes we see the fear of God in people in Genesis, and sometimes we don't. The third theme is rewards. So either you get vastly rewarded or you die, is basically the way it goes in Genesis. And there's a farming analogy where they say that if a farmer has grapevines that are producing and multiplying, then he is going to take those vines and multiply them so that he gets more grapes and more vines. But if this vine over here isn't producing anything, then the farmer is known to just cut the vine, get rid of it, and that's it. And so that's the analogy of what God does. If you're multiplying and you're producing and you're somewhat following the plan that he set for you, then he allows you to multiply, and then he allows future generations to multiply. But if you don't do something that he likes, then he will strike you, he will kill you, and that is it. Game over. And so those are the first 3 themes, and the last one is jealousy. And jealousy is not present in all the 7 stories that I'm going to cover in Genesis, but it's in some and not in others. It's not in Adam and Eve, but it is in Cain and Abel. And so sometimes there's jealousy and sometimes there isn't, but those are the four themes that are in all of Genesis. And so that's what I'm going to cover in the seven stories that I cover in Genesis. It will be revolving around those four themes. And so let's start with Genesis. I'm going to read the first two sentences. I promise I won't read too much looking down, but I'm going to read the first two sentences and then the 27th sentence. So the first two sentences is, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the water. End quote. So those are the first two sentences of the Bible. And so the things that stick out to me is the Spirit of God, and he was hovering over the water. So that can tell us two things right off the bat. One, basically God is not human. He operates under his own rules, his own way. He's formless and a spirit. So this means that if he shows himself to you, it's because he did precisely that. He is allowing himself to be seen. It's not that you're so great that you get to see God. No. It actually turns out that God only reveals himself to the people that he deems worthy. So God is invisible, and he only reveals himself to those that he deems worthy. So the 27th sentence of Genesis says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him. Male and female he created them. And so based off those first two sentences and the 27th sentence, we can basically conclude three things. One, we can conclude, which I've already talked about, that God is a spirit. He's invisible. You can't see him unless he wants you to see him. That's the only way this thing works. Two, we were created in his image. The 27th sentence precisely says, God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. So it's very clearly laid out in the 27th sentence. We were created in his image. And three, male and female he created. So there aren't very many things that we actually can say, I know this about God. But I feel like these are the three things that we actually do know. We do know that God is the Spirit. It's in the first sentence. He hovers over the water. It's in there. We were created in his image, and he created male and female. I'm not going to say that's all we know about God, but those are three facts in the first page of the Bible where we can clearly say, look, it says it here, and it says it here. And so that's page one of Genesis. I would highly encourage you to read it on your own. But in my eyes, those are the three most revealing sentences where you can actually get to understand of what God is, how he acts, versus what the media tells us that God is and how he acts. So let's go ahead and dive right into Adam and Eve.